Jeff Goodman. He's Bob Ryan, and we are joined by the esteemed New York Times NBA writer, Marc Stein, my former colleague at ESPN, somebody who I feel like knows the NBA better than anybody, other than Bob Ryan, of course.
No. On my days, I'm more of a historian these days. So.
You are a historian. That is true. And we'll find out some of that history.
But
here
I mean, I'm trying to keep up, but I need people. I have to follow people. Fortunately, I'm a subscriber, so I get Mark all the time. No problem.
Steinline. Follow him at the Steinline on Twitter. Always a good follow. And also a Cal State Fullerton grad. I'm sorry, your Titans are not very good this year, Mark, but there's always hope. There's always hope.
If you want to, well, first of all, I really want to hear Bob's stories. I don't want to tell my dumb stories. I'd much rather hear his. But just to give you one very quick college basketball story for you. The last time I was at a Fullerton game, they actually took me with them to Pauley, and we won at Pauley for only the second time, and that was an incredible day. A few months before this horrible pandemic shut us all down, but in December of 19, I actually got to go with the team on the team bus.
That's cool.
They treated me like part of the coaching staff and got to be on the bench for. I am 1-0 at Pauley Pavilion.
Very good. Very good. I have never been to a Titans game, but I have been to the Anteaters. So I'm sorry. So I'm going to have to put the Titans on my gym bucket list, which stands at 201 right now, though Jeff disputes it.
I do.
Disputes my tally.
He uses, like he uses gyms that he's been to if they were like in a high school tournament or something. I don't know. All sorts of Ryan.
You don't like it because I include women, junior college.
Right.
I went to the JUCO tournament one year for the whole year.
It's illegal. It's completely illegal. You can only go.
Is the ball round? Is it 2 points for a basket and 1 for a free throw and 3 points behind the arc? Huh?
So wait. So early in your career, you knew I'm going to keep count of how many gyms I set foot in.
No, some point along the way, maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I decided I'd try to do an annotation, and I really, work. And if anything, it's an undercount, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
If anything, it's an undercount, not by too much.
Don't forget anything. You do not forget any gym you ever stepped into. You could tell me the year, the month, the day, who they played, and probably what the damn final score was. It's incredible, Mark.
But we digress. We have a distinguished guest here.
Yes. Let's get on to what we got Mark on for here, and you can kick things off.
All right, Mark. It seems to me that there's one overwhelming interest story in the NBA, and it's the big three. They've been hatched. All right, we have 3 samples. What's your observation on what we have seen from the first 3 games with the big three in Brooklyn?
It's probably gone better than when I thought it would. Throwing these guys together practice time has never been more scarce than it is now in the NBA. It's impossible to practice. So Kyrie coming back from a long absence and then putting Harden out there offensively, they've been amazing. Obviously the 2 games against Cleveland defensively, disastrous, but I think they'll look good in the regular season, but I'm not a believer. I don't like the approach. I don't think it can work long term. I think it's too much to heap on Nash as a first-year coach. I just don't see how 3 ball-dominant guys can work. But I think deep down we know why they did it. Kyrie has stopped being someone reliable. Their first season of Durant, they didn't even get Durant, and I think they felt pressure that we can get James Harden. We better grab him, even though it's going to cost us control of the next 7 drafts. Get Harden, hope we can figure it out, and hope that Harden convinces Durant to sign another contract. I think those are their big ambitions besides trying to win it all, obviously.
Could you have remotely foreseen that Harden would be so, dare I say, deferential?
Yeah, and he deserves credit for that. Because nobody thought he could. Everybody thought he's played this kind of basketball in Houston for 8 years, which I don't even know if, I don't know if there's ever been an offense so centered around one person in terms of how much he's had the ball and the way they catered to his every whim. And so far, he has gone out of his way to show he can still facilitate, he can still play the way he did in Oklahoma City. So I think he has definitely surprised the skeptics. But
you know Steve Nash better than just about any media person. How does he handle the egos? Because I've been around Kyrie a lot. He's tough to deal with. He's just tough. He's moody. We've been through it. Bob, listen, I've never heard Bob as negative about any player as he is about Kyrie Irving. And that says a lot. That says a lot. And James Harden is just as different in his own way, right? And KD has changed. Like those three egos, how is Steve Nash possible? He can't coach this team, can he?
I think the ego handling part is probably the part that's the easiest for him. Not to say that it's easy, but he just has that way. He has a personality. You know, as you said, I covered him so much and I've seen him do it. He's great at bringing people together. I mean, that is a natural skill that he has. And that's really why he has this job. But it's one thing to do it as a point guard and one of the most beloved point guards ever. It's a completely different thing to do it as a coach. And he's learning the coaching profession at the same time. That's the bigger challenge. He's never coached anywhere. And, you know, I'm sure Bob could probably help us form a much more complete list than I could. But in terms of difficult first-year coaching jobs, I mean, this has to be in the conversation for, you know, toughest ever. I mean, because of the expectations, they're expected to win it all. He's never coached a meaningful game. And to have to learn that on the fly while trying to manage these egos, that's where it's a tall order.
I lived with an OJT coach 50 years ago, and Tommy Heinsohn, but the circumstances he faced were interesting because he was the first coach to have to coach a Celtic team without Bill Russell and Sam Jones, and it was a very interesting year, you know, for his adjustment. But this is a whole different, you know, the world's different, the league's different, everything's different.
That's like the scrutiny, I think, is just like I'm sure at the time it felt the same, but I just think the way the NBA is scrutinized now with the 24/7 microscope of social media adds a component that, I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, I'd much rather hear your stories than tell mine to imagine what it was like to cover the league then.
You'll weep because the life that we led, the access that we had, the fraternity of the league. We're all in this together. Everybody, players, coaches, writers, referees, trainers. Oh God, I knew all the trainers, you know, because I was hanging around in those locker rooms that you can't get into now. I mean pre-COVID.
Yeah.
You know, forget about COVID. You know, but anyway, yeah. But the circumstance I described to you, Mark, there were no expectations of greatness. Everyone knew it was going to be a transition year. So, you know, he had a honeymoon there. Tommy did.
I would just guess though that, because I think that's a great comparison that most people wouldn't even cite because they don't remember Tommy Heinsohn coaching. They only remember Tommy as a broadcaster. But I would have thought the buy-in Tommy had from those players, having played there for so long, like, you know, today, these guys, they drop on a coach so quick. I mean, that's the thing. When things start going bad, will Steve Nash have that buy-in from these guys?
Yeah. Well, that's it. What's coaching success depend on them buying what you're selling, and you're a salesperson. You know, I say we're all salespeople. You know, in different ways. You know, to negotiate the lives that we, you know, as writers that you lead. But coaches have to negotiate. They have to be salespeople to the players, right? I mean, in a sense, and particularly this NBA, because the player entitlement, the background of who these guys are and how they got to where they are is so vastly different than how a player got to where he would be in 1970. You know, the world is totally, their adolescent upbringing is completely different. You know?
I mean, my take on it is today, I mean, obviously the most important thing for a coach is your players, no question, your talent. But number two, and it's really 1A, is the buy-in factor. X's and O's are such a distant third for the modern NBA coach. You know, I mean, like now, you know, Mike D'Antoni is there to lend all his offensive wisdom to Steve Nash, to lend all that expertise and making decisions on the fly as a coach that Steve doesn't have. That's what D'Antoni's there for. You can hire someone to provide that, but the buy-in from stars, you cannot bring in an assistant to help with that. The coach either has it or he doesn't.
Right. Well, I from afar, I don't know him. I had one post-game interview, I remember two, during my late years in the league covering. But my observation was he's up to the task. If anybody is, there's something. He's special. I think he's definitely special.
No question. He is marvelous around people.
Third-party observation.
Is he like Steve Kerr, Mark? In a lot of ways, are there some similarities you see between Nash?
Oh no, I think they are incredibly similar. I think even the way they speak. I didn't notice it until Steve Kerr became a coach, but Steve Kerr and Steve Nash are very close. And just like even some of the facial mannerisms when Kerr speaks, I see Nash sometimes. And they both have it. And like Nash is the kind of guy, I mean, my standout memory in kind of describing the way he is in terms of just being with people, though, in the Phoenix Glory years, I remember they won a big game in Dallas, a big playoff game. And I went to Nash after a game to get some quotes from him. And he pulls me aside and says, "Go talk to Marion." I'm like, okay, what? He's like, he read he saw everything that was going on in the room at the minute. And he was worried that nobody was like gassing up Marion for playing well. He's like, "Go talk to Marion and, ask him a bunch of questions about how great he played." Like he would just see stuff like that
a feel for people.
He has it. There's no question he has it.
I'm just thought just popped into my head. And if it's totally and completely out of, say, hey, Bob, that has nothing to do with anything. What about him being a Canadian has to do with the way he is related to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, he is, he's Canadian, but also he was raised, his parents are English. I mean, so I guess he just does. He
born
always
in South Africa.
His dad. Yeah, he was born in South Africa because his dad played soccer, was playing professionally in South Africa at the time. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think he probably would say it makes him tougher because I think he has that hockey mentality. He did grow up playing hockey. That's the other thing about him. He is one of those guys who's so good at everything, every sport. When he plays soccer, he looks like he could have played professional soccer. I saw him play in a charity baseball game. Mike Madonna for years had a charity baseball game in Dallas, and Dirk adopted it, and he convinced Nash to play in this game one year. And Nash turned to double play. He played second base, hadn't played baseball in 30 years, and he looked like a professional second baseman turning the double play. He's just one of those guys. It's annoying.
Ainge is one of those guys, that.
Oh yeah. They're tight, from their time together in Phoenix. I think they hit it off too for a lot of the same reasons.
But anyway, it's a unique, almost a unique circumstance of throwing a first-year coach into this, and it's going to be. They're going to be a story all year, aren't they? I mean, we're going to be watching. I know. I'm looking at that box score. I'm looking for that box score every morning now. I am. And by the way, for people who don't know, I made allusion to, I just want so people understand what we're talking about with Harden. So far in the first 3 games together, here's the shot attempts total. Durant, 65. Irving, 62. Harden, 32.
Wow. Well, he's proven a point too. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah, no question. No question.
My question then is, he showing off to a degree? I mean, you
smart.
Question motivation.
Very smart.
You can't help it. They're wondering what is this game plan here? Exactly. Is it just a team-oriented thing, or is he just trying to show the world? So, that's not going through your mind. Well, all right, James, what's the deal? You may be overdoing this a little bit. I mean,
but it's regular season, Bob. That's part of it right now. The key is going to be, how are the shots distributed when it matters, right? Like, this doesn't matter. Whatever seed they get, Mark, does it really matter that much? I mean, you want to avoid Milwaukee, I guess, but are the Bucks that overpowering this year that you have to avoid them if you're Brooklyn? Like, if you're playing at the top of your game and you're Brooklyn, do you fear anybody in the East?
I think they have to have the, this, as Greg Popovich calls it, the so-called appropriate fear because of their defensive shortcomings, because of the depth issues. I think they, maybe, I mean, they're never going to admit it. I mean, the way these are all mega stars. So I'm sure they don't, if they have any fear, they're not going to show it to us. But, there are so many questions about this team still. But yeah, I think they are going to be the team that that inspires the most curiosity, because it just, three ball dominant guys like this, I just don't know that we've ever seen it.
Is Joe Harris a perfect compliment? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably the one guy you don't need to worry about. I mean, he fits in seamlessly I mean, he would fit in seamlessly anywhere with the game he plays. But are they going to be able to play playoff defense?
Yeah, that's
probably.
Can the minutes these guys are playing, can they keep it up? I mean, Durant already looks like the best comeback from an Achilles ever. Like, he's already clinched that in, less than 20 games, but they're playing him way more than they want to. And I think they know that.
So give me your biggest disappointment so far, Mark, as a team. For me, it's probably, like, you can't really include Miami because Jimmy Butler's barely played. So, like, to me, I'd throw that one out the window. I know they've been bad. To me, it's New Orleans. Like 5-10, Mark. Like,
yeah.
This team isn't. I love what Griff did early. I did. I loved it. I was like, and now I look at it and I'm like, the pieces don't fit. You can't have Lonzo, Zion, and Steven Adams all playing minutes on the same team. None of them can really shoot the ball from the perimeter, and you're not playing JJ enough.
I think a lot of people would nominate New Orleans for that. I'm not trying to make myself sound super smart here, but I'm not terribly surprised. I think it's always hard to pull that off with we're gonna stockpile draft picks and we're really building for the future. But yeah, we also want to stay competitive too and kind of make a run for the 7th or 8th seed. That's always harder to do. Stan Van Gundy, though, he is the kind of guy that you think this is gonna be a 500 team at the worst. Stan will get them organized. He'll get them to max out. But they're doing it in what is now considered such an untraditional way, when you have Zion and Steven Adams, going super big when everybody is going the other way. Lonzo Ball has just not. I mean, he's not come anywhere close to what
shocks me, Mark.
What they thought he
it has shocked me. I thought he'd be way better. I did. I thought he'd be way better than he is.
So, I mean, the good news for them is, again, that they have all these picks to, what they really do this year doesn't matter so much. And they've got such a good future because of all the draft capital that they've built up. But yeah, I mean, I think most people would say that's the team.
I'm going to go parochial on you for a moment. Jeff and I have discussed at length Jaylen Brown and his development, and is this being noticed outside our little 128 area?
Yeah, no question. No, he's an all-star for sure, the way he's playing. And it came up so much because the Celtics were kind of mentioned as this team on the periphery in the Harden sweepstakes. And I think you guys know Danny better than I do. They're not going to advertise it, but he's a player like Harden's available. He is going to go all the way to the line and look at it and ask himself, is this a guy we should go after? And I think they did. I think they weren't in it till the end, however we want to define in it. But you're obviously not trading Tatum. And I think Brown is the same way. I think Jaylen Brown has elevated himself to the point that if you're the Celtics, you do not trade Jaylen Brown, who is developing on this amazing curve, for a question mark in James Harden, when you don't know how willing he would be to be in Boston and how he would embrace that situation. So, I mean, it's been a huge boost to the Celtics to see what he's become. I mean, they have a lot of question marks, but they have two undeniably sensational cornerstone players.
if Kemba gets back to close to 100%, do you feel like the Celtics can come out of the East?
Yeah, to me, the East is still a grab bag. I mean, there are, Indiana's. It's funny because coming into the season, my take was that the East is still, way behind the West in terms of depth, but at least the top 6 of the East is going to be fascinating. And I was leaving out Indiana, who still belong in that group. Toronto has had a real uneven start, so they've got to kind of prove that they're still part of that mix. But I mean, nobody's running away with the East, and depending on how the matchups go, depending on how these teams develop in an absolutely bizarre season, I wouldn't pick the Celtics right now, but I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I mean, I still think Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Philly are the top 3, but nobody's running away with the East right now.
Mark, the Celtics became the latest team this year, the other night, to score 140. We've had games where teams have scored 140, each of them without overtimes. The scoring is up in a just an amazing way. Okay, the joking theory is nobody wants to guard anybody because of COVID, But seriously, is there any discussion or buzz around the league about this, or what is exactly going on? Are people just saying screw defense? What is going on?
Well, I think one of the other stats that's making the rounds is half the teams in the league now, 40% of their shots are from 3, and so there are a lot of people turned off by that. I was baiting you.
That's not. Hey, you can bait him a whole lot easier than that.
It doesn't bother me. I love distance shooting and I love shot making, but yeah, I mean, the question is posed all the time. Are teams taking too many threes? Is the way that the game has evolved to basically all threes and layups? I certainly don't miss 90s basketball and maybe even early. I mean, was it the 04 final? What was the year San Antonio beat Detroit? Was that 5?
That was 04. 04.
04 Pistons beat the Lakers. It was 05.
Okay.
That 7 games of just absolute slog. Just like, I don't miss that.
I hated it too, but there's a middle ground. I hated that. I decried it. I screamed about it. I wrote about it endlessly. I tracked the beginning and who the culprits were. Jerry Sloan, Larry Brown of all people, taking fewer than 80 shots a game. When and that's a stat people don't talk about that I used to pay attention to. I didn't want that either. But now we have this. It's not all just about the 3 though. I don't think. It must be pace of game is better.
Well, there's more. I mean, there's more possessions in games. I mean, I think this is the 3rd year in a row where teams have topped that 100 possession a game mark. So, I mean, that's a thing. It's funny that the 7 seconds or less Suns, they were seen as this revolutionary team. Pace wise, they'd be bottom 3rd now in terms of possessions a game. So that definitely is it. I mean, there's just so many more. Teams have the ball more than they did, and they're getting shots up so much faster.
But I mean, believe me, don't get me wrong. I like offense, and I screamed about that the way the league had deteriorated. I called it the ice age. You go look it up. It's you can see how the deterioration of shot attempts. And I used to say it was about fraidy cat coaches who were happier when they didn't have the ball than when they did, and then that was awful. I mean, we. Just go back. You're talking about the 04-05, the Knicks and the Rockets series were, all those Knicks and the Miami, they were sludges. It was awful stuff. I mean, I'm happier, but I like a middle ground. Here's what drives me crazy. Guy drives in, he's 2 feet from the basket, he turns around and throws it back out for the 3. Now, yeah, if it goes in, that's a nice play. But my head explodes every time I see that. And big guys who particularly when it's a big guy that gets a ball, I've seen it. They get the ball low and then they throw it right back. I don't even think about taking a 2-foot jump hook. That's all. All right, I'm off the soapbox now.
All right, hey Mark, you've covered some really good players in your career. Where does Luka? And I know you haven't been around him as much. Obviously, nobody has over the last, you're in the bubble, but it's not the same. You're not around him like you would be around him if we didn't have the pandemic. But just what is he like to be around? What is he like to watch compared to some of the other stars that you have been around in the past? Even on a, I'm not even at like some of the stars that you've seen occasionally come through or cover in a playoff series. Describe Luka to us.
It's super fun to watch him. And I think for me, just probably my favorite thing in the game is passing. And just he's such a great passer and an entertaining passer. You know, obviously I didn't get to even really, you know, I've seen clips, but I never was around a Maravich. But, you know, he is a showman and an entertainer. And look, there's things he's got to work on. I mean, fourth quarter shot selection is an area that he needs to improve. You know, I think he gets engaged with the refs, you know, probably more than the Mavs would like him to. But look, you know me, because of covering Dirk for so long and because of my, you know, all my ties to Israel, and, you know, the story that kind of got me in the NBA was covering Vlade Divac when the Lakers drafted him. I was still in college, but my first kind of NBA break was being able to cover Summer League in 1989. I think Bob would back me up. In those days, you know, the beat writers didn't cover Summer League. Summer League was not the institution it is today. So I'm working at the Orange County Register. The Lakers writer, Don Greenberg, who Bob will remember, Earl Bloom, you know, these guys, they would go to June every year because the Lakers were in the finals every year. These guys didn't want to go to Summer League. So Summer League was up for grabs. And in 1989, Robin Romano was an assistant editor and someone with Boston ties, who I also think Bob knows. And I begged her all year long, please let me cover Summer League, please. I annoyed her so much, and she did. 1989 Summer League. So not only was Vlade Divac there, David Robinson was there for the Spurs. It was the summer that all the European players came over. Alexander Volkov was there. And so I was 20 years old and I got to do this Summer League. I actually knew Vlade's game because on trips to Israel to see family, I would get to see games of him playing for the when Yugoslavia was still a unified national team. And that was, I always say, the best team nobody ever saw, because so my love affair with European basketball goes back that far, all the way to the 80s.
I gotta jump in right here. No, this is like, you got my pulse racing. I have maintained for the last 30 years, or 20, that it's conceivable that the Yugoslavian team together with Divac and Rajda and of course Petrovic and all of them, Paspal, if they played the dream team in a best of 7, okay, that the dream team, that in game 3 in Belgrade or in game 3 in Belgrade with the home court, home cooking reffing, they could have won a game.
For sure.
At least a game.
People have no idea talk about home court advantage. I mean, that place is insane. That team was unreal. Dražen was unreal. I mean, you're right. I mean, it was kind of one of the great what ifs of the sport that we'll never know. They couldn't win the series, but they could make those. They would have made it a series. They would have made those guys play.
I know that they could have played with them, and anyway, that would have been. But so, right. Anyway,
you're taking a young guy.
So I guess what I'm saying is, having followed European basketball since then, and not like as closely as I follow the NBA, but having followed European basketball that long, even with all of that, when Luka came from Real Madrid, I knew he was great. I thought he should have been the number 1 pick, but I can't sit here and say, I think this guy's going to come right in and be the NBA player he is. I mean, he is still, after being EuroLeague MVP, he has still exceeded expectations. He's still played at a higher level than people thought. I mean, the guy's a walking triple-double, and he was doing that last year in year 2. I mean, he's so far ahead of where I think even the most optimistic projections were.
This is the ultimate, the classic playing chess while the others are playing checkers guy. He sees this game. He sees things in advance. Very, of course, I'm going to always come back to, who, very bird-like in that regard. Now, and I mean, Larry didn't handle the ball as much as other people because he was a pure forward. But he was saying, he's got the element of this game. I gushed about Doncic in a tweet that people, just crucified me for. I said, he takes my breath away. I probably should have phrased it a little better but boy, is he fun to watch.
You're actually the perfect person to ask this question, because I've wondered this. If Larry were playing in today's NBA, is this how he would have played? Is Luka, wouldn't he have had the ball in his hands much more than he did?
Yeah. I think they probably would have done that. But I mean, I don't know if he would have been real comfortable with that way, he was, but he could adjust to anything. The thing I think most about Larry playing in today's game is, instead of taking 2 or 3 3-pointers a game, like, he'd be doing what everybody else would be doing, be taking 7 or 8 or whatever the hell or more, and he was the original 3-point king, as we well know. Literally 3 years in a row, he won the 3-point contest.
I mean, would he be better as a big 1 or a small 5? I mean, he could do both, obviously. I mean, that's he
probably big 1, but but he was just a player, a great player. But I always say, think about Larry, and when you talk about the great passers, and of course I always say the 2 best passing forwards, LeBron and him. But Larry got more done with fewer touches than any great player ever. That I can assure you. More done with fewer touches. He didn't have, he wasn't handling the ball all the time the way, obviously Magic was a point guard. Harden, dribble, all that, but that was not his game. And he still would rack up these assist totals because of anticipation and vision and, touch passes and over the head passes. And he's the master of the entry pass, because there's no entry pass now who posts up, But anyway, I digress again.
By the way, Bob, Luka got his 31st triple-double last night. Do you know who he tied on the all-time triple-double list?
Tell me.
John Havlicek. 13.
I'm surprised they even had the annotation of how many John had, because of those days that, so much is lost. That's good. Well, I knew he was doing stuff like that when I covered him, but we didn't have a phrase for it. The phrase was coined, to the best of my recollection, by Bruce Jalish, who was then the Laker PR guy, and came up with this idea of calling a game in which you had triple double figures in those 3 categories a triple double. And anyway, so I'm glad. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
No problem. Hey, Mark, how worried are you? I mean, does it even matter? Like, there's been 22 games postponed already. Or about a month into the season overall now. Like, is that fine? Like in college, there's, I don't know, on a Saturday, there's like 10 games postponed every Saturday, but there's so much inventory, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So life goes on. And I actually talked to Dan Gavitt yesterday from the NCAA, and I asked him his confidence level of getting, start to finish for the NCAA tournament, even though they're not bubbling up. And he said it's high. And I said, well, what happens if a player, like a Gonzaga player, tests positive in the middle of the tournament? He said, well, we're not pausing the tournament. Like, tournament's not something you can pause. So life goes on. And that's kind of the way it's been in the NBA. I mean, Jason Tatum was out a couple weeks. The Memphis Grizzlies have missed a bunch of games.
Wizards.
Do you see anything changing, or are they just going to, just let's march on unless you have 10 teams that can't play at a time?
I think it's just the problem with trying to answer that now is we don't know where we're going to be in May. How widely distributed will the vaccine be in May? I think the league feels like in May, if the vaccine is widely distributed by that point, that they can, stage the playoffs with less they better be able to stage it with a lot less concern they have right now, because it is 22 postponements as we record this, and it's been nearly 1 a day for the last 2+ weeks. And are they going to try to make all those games up? Are they going to have to cut the schedule shorter than the 72 games it is now, because you're just not going to have time to make up all the games you want to make up? And look, if this climate is not much better than it is now, they're going to have to consider a bubble for the playoffs, because we talked so much last year. is it an asterisk season because of the bubble? You're really going to be straying into asterisk territory if in the playoffs, star X suddenly is out for 10 to 14 days. I mean, that's never happened. And so, I think there are people who kind of are thinking of that in the back of their mind. In the playoffs, are they going to have to reconsider maybe not for all 4 rounds, but for some of it, are you going to have to go back to a bubble to ensure the integrity of the playoffs?
I want to ask you about your hometown team. I mean, your current hometown team, and Tibbs. And what's your take on the early returns of this marriage, the New York Knicks and Tom Thibodeau?
I mean, it's gone better, I think, than people anticipated because it's not a Tibbs roster. I mean, we know Tibbs wants veteran guys and a team that can, is ready-made to compete for the playoffs. And the Knicks are obviously rebuilding. And I think there was a lot of skepticism about, is Tibbs really the right guy to coach a team that's essentially starting over? But he has organized them in the way they, he's definitely put an imprint on that team. And I think he's getting them to max out. I mean, I don't think anyone had any illusions of grandeur that this was going to be, a team that could do anything this season. But, all the questions to me with the Knicks are this front office. Leon Rose has still not addressed the media. I mean,
crazy.
He'll do an MSG sit down or issue the odd press release. But I mean, New York, where, GMs and coaches sparring with the press is a sport unto itself since I was a kid. And now you have a Knicks GM who never talks. But beyond that, I mean, that's not the most important thing in the world. Leon was obviously as accomplished as you could get as an agent, but he's never done this job. Can he build a contending team? I mean, I think there's still a lot for that group to prove. Tibbs, we know Tibbs is very organized. He's great at his job. You're gonna feel his presence immediately, and I think that's all true. But there's so many roster questions that this team still needs to answer.
One thing that looks like a positive that Emmanuel quickly has attracted a great deal of attention.
He's beloved already by Knicks fans. I don't think there's any question about that. But look, I don't want to.
So was Kevin Knox a few years ago.
Well, that's because I think it's a little bit too early to second guess picks. And Jeff Goodman forgot more about the NBA draft than I ever knew. But before that draft, there was a lot of Halliburton buzz to the Knicks, and they didn't take Halliburton, who's been sensational with Sacramento. So I already wonder, is the pressure going to mount quickly on Obi Toppin not being Halliburton?
I have no confidence, zero confidence that the New York Knicks management will get the Knicks to be competitive again. Zero with Leon Rose and World Wide West. That's me. When's the last time James Dolan made a smart move with anybody he hired? The track record. That's all I'll say. Like, unless they get Devin Booker, like their whole roster is CAA guys, and they're not good ones.
Or Kentucky alumni.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy to me. Like, I don't know. The whole World Wide West thing it makes me laugh. I mean, even here's an inside baseball one, but like, so they draft Obi Toppin, and then the next thing, part of the deal is that Kentucky takes Obi Toppin's brother, Jacob, as a transfer from Rhode Island. So like they're working deals cross sports, cross levels. I mean, again, I like Julius Randle. I'm glad he's playing well, but he can't be your number one guy on a playoff team. Like,
no, and they know that they're realistic about this roster, but that's when we judge this thing. Tom Thibodeau is going to bring a level of gravitas and coaching nous to the deal, and it's going to be it's going to be a well-run NBA team, but they've got to upgrade the roster, and that's not on Tom Thibodeau.
Mark, they should have traded Mitchell Robinson after last year because he had value, and to me, the more people see, it's empty numbers. It's empty numbers. Somebody's got to put up numbers on shitty teams, and like Mitchell Robinson's fine, and he's now being tutored by Nerlens Noel. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? I mean, it just, again, poor decision after poor decision from Leon Rose and World Wide West. And the problem is they're winning too many games right now. They're winning too many games. They need to suck this year because this year's draft is loaded at the top. Like, if you can get in the top 3, maybe even 5 of this year's draft, you got a chance to get, I'm not going to say an all-star, but like a guy that's got that type of potential.
Well, they definitely hired the wrong coach then, if that's the strategy.
It is.
Because they will not, Tom Thibodeau teams will not be laying down and losing games.
All right. Well, listen, we know you've got plenty on your plate today. The 1-year anniversary of Kobe was yesterday.
That's today, 26.
It is today. It is today. Is it? We'll kind of let you go on this. I mean, it seems like I was down at I surprised my parents last year. They were in Florida and surprised them and was down in Florida just hanging out with them for a couple days, stole a couple days during the college basketball season when it happened. And it seems like years ago now. It seems like absolutely does not seem like a year ago. It seems like more than that.
Well, it's pre-COVID, and that has just changed our entire feel for everything in life, you know.
Where were you, Mark?
I was actually home, and my youngest son, I actually had just finished pinch coaching his he was on a club soccer team, and they had an indoor game, and I stepped in for the coach that morning. So I had just coached him. My wife was the team manager, and so came home and got that news, and you know, I will never forget that feeling. And like a lot of people, I think all around the league, people, you still can't believe it. A year later, it still just does not compute. It has not sunk in. I mean, this guy was such a mammoth presence. I was a Laker beat writer when they drafted him. And that's the thing, you know, he was 17 when the Lakers drafted him. And so the young Kobe is what always sticks with me most. Having been there when he just got there, and you know, I was 24 when I started covering the league. I was only 27. So Kobe was the first player I ever covered in the NBA that I was actually 10 years older than. I mean, he really was such a kid. And just to think that there were 3 teenage girls on that helicopter, and that's the part that I can't shake that. I can't.
Was there a Kobe story before we let you go? Was there one? I'm sure you've written about it, but to hear you talk about, was there one moment that you'll always remember?
I mean, as a player, from his very first press conference, from his very first summer league game, there has never been someone more confident and more certain that he was going to be an all-time great than Kobe Bryant. And from age 17, he believed he was destined to be, you know, every ounce the player that he became. I mean, selfishly speaking, what was huge for me, I actually got so I was the Laker beat writer for the LA Daily News, and the Kobe's first season was also Shaq's first season. By the end of that regular season, I got the job offer to go to Dallas to the Morning News. And in those days, the Dallas Morning News was just a titanic newspaper. I mean, it was massive. The way they covered sports, you know, Dave Smith, the editor, actually came from the Boston Globe, so Bob knows him well. I mean, the Morning News was just, on Sundays, their sports section would be 2 or 3 separate sections. I mean, I had to take the job, and everybody with the Lakers thought I was nuts. They're like, you are leaving the Laker beat to cover the Dallas Mavericks, who at the time were the NBA laughingstock. And I said, no, I'm leaving the LA Daily News to go to the Lakers of newspapers. That's how good Dallas Morning News was. But just having covered Kobe those first 9 months of his career, I actually left and had to take the job before the playoffs even started. Before, you know, so April 97, I go to Dallas. But from that first 9 months, Kobe never forgot that I was there from the beginning, and he always made time for me. When in the next 20 odd years, and so for me, I always greatly appreciated that just having been, I was there enough at the beginning that he remembered that. And when he would come to Dallas, I would always get, a few one-on-one minutes with him, which, now doesn't even it was hard to make it happen then. It's near impossible, now. No, I still, I marvel whenever I see Bob and I think of the Paul Westphal finals story. I don't know if any of us will ever be topping that one.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. The final question, and it's a one-word question. The last name of the greatest Cal State Fullerton basketball player in Titans history is who? And don't give me a long. I just want one name. Come on.
Wood Sabalos.
You can't do that.
Well, you can, because as a collegian, Leon Wood was the best.
Sabalos.
But as an NBA, but said had a better NBA career. So how do you
Bobby Brown had the best overseas career. So.
How do you split that?
There you go. Thanks for joining us, Mark. We appreciate it, man. Be good and try to enjoy a little bit of time off this week if you can.
Thanks, guys. My pleasure.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care, man. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Be
Really
well.
appreciate it.